There's something lonely about train stations after midnight. The city becomes quieter and people stop pretending, so feelings become harder to hide. That's where Elias met him again. Elias worked nights at a small coffee shop near the subway station downtown. Every evening felt the same. Tired customers, cold coffee cups, rain tapping softly against the windows, and then the last train crowd around midnight. And among those people, there was always one man Elias noticed. Tall, dark coat, silver rings on his fingers, and tired eyes that looked like they carried too much silence. Every single night, he ordered the same thing: black coffee, no sugar. Then, he sat quietly near the window until the next train arrived. Elias never learned his name, but somehow he started looking forward to seeing him. At first, they barely spoke. Just, "Thank you," "Long night," "Trains late again," simple things. But over weeks, the conversations became longer. "You always work this late?" the man asked one rainy night. Elias nodded while wiping down the counter. "You always look exhausted?" The man laughed softly. For the first time, it surprised Elias because it was truly warm. The kind of laugh that sounded unfamiliar, like someone who forgot how to relax. "My name's Luca," he said finally. Elias smiled, slightly. Elias. After that, things changed quietly. Luca began staying longer after getting his coffee, and over time, a sense of familiarity grew. Sometimes they talked about music and sometimes movies, but then sometimes nothing important at all. But the strange thing was, it was a peculiar feeling. Really, silence around Luca never felt awkward. It felt peaceful, like a warm, comforting blanket. One night, the rain became so heavy, the trains stopped temporarily, and customers slowly disappeared, until only Luca remained inside the cafe. The lights outside reflected softly against the wet streets, and the city looked truly beautiful in a lonely kind of way. "You ever think about leaving?" Luca asked suddenly, his voice breaking the stillness. Elias looked up, and Luca's question hung in the air. "This city?" he clarified as Luca nodded slowly. Elias thought about it honestly, and his response was straightforward. "All the time." Luca smiled faintly, a gentle, knowing smile, and said, "But you stay anyway." Elias' response was simple, yet profound. "So do you." That made Luca quiet, lost in thought. Over time, Elias noticed things. Small, subtle things. Luca always looked at his phone before entering the cafe, and then sighed afterward, a soft, resigned sigh. Some nights, his hands trembled slightly around his coffee cup, and sometimes his smile disappeared completely when he thought nobody noticed. One particularly cold evening, Elias finally asked, his voice low and gentle, "You okay?" Luca froze briefly, as if caught off guard, and then laughed softly, a melancholy sound. "That obvious?" Elias leaned against the counter, his eyes locked on Luca's, and said, "You look sad." The honesty startled Luca, and, for several seconds, he simply stared down at his untouched coffee, the silence between them growing thicker. Then, finally, he admitted quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "I was engaged once." Elias stayed silent, letting the words hang in the air. As Luca continued, his voice cracking, "He left 6 months ago." The cafe suddenly felt quieter, the stillness more pronounced, and Luca smiled weakly, a sad, heartbreaking smile. "Guess I wasn't enough to make him stay." Something painful twisted inside Elias, hearing that, because nobody should say those words about themselves like they believe them, and in that moment Elias' heart went out to Luca. After that night, they became closer naturally, and it was a gradual process. Not suddenly, but slowly, and not dramatically, just comfortably. Luca started waiting for Elias after closing time, and sometimes they walked together through quiet city streets before separating at the station. One night, while waiting under a small bus stop during rain, Luca suddenly laughed, and Elias looked over immediately. "What?" he asked. Luca shook his head. "It's stupid," he said. "What is?" Elias pressed on, and Luca replied, "I think this is the happiest I've been in months." Elias felt his heartbeat stumble softly, because somehow he felt the same way. But happiness scared Luca, and Elias noticed it immediately. Every time they got closer, Luca pulled back slightly afterward, like he was afraid of wanting too much again. Then one night, Luca stopped coming to the cafe entirely, and one night became 3, then a week. Elias hated how empty the cafe suddenly felt without him, and he kept looking toward the door automatically every midnight, waiting. But there was nothing, until finally, during heavy rain, the cafe door opened again, and Luca stood there, soaked from the storm and exhausted. "You disappeared," Elias said quietly, and Luca looked guilty immediately. "I know," he said. Elias crossed his arms. "You could have texted," he added, and Luca replied, "I got scared." The honesty hit hard, and Luca stepped closer slowly. "I think," he said carefully, "I started needing this place too much." Elias' chest tightened, and Luca laughed weakly. "And needing people usually ends badly for me." Rain hit softly against the windows behind him, and the cafe lights glowed warm around them. Elias stared at him silently for several seconds, then finally walked closer too, and said softly, "You're allowed to stay." Luca's expression broke slightly at those words, like nobody had told him that in a very long time. The train station outside remained loud, but inside the tiny cafe, everything felt still, safe. Luca looked at Elias quietly, then smiled, a small, real, warm smile, warm enough to chase away months of loneliness. And for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of belonging. It was truly a beautiful feeling, and the midnight train no longer felt like something carrying him away from people. It felt like something that finally brought him somewhere he belonged. Do you think Luca and Elias found real love, or just comfort in each other? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional BL stories every week.